Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. And this is actually, this is very propitious. That's a great word, Tara. It's very propitious for a lot of reasons, because this interview is the beginning of the second season of Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. And this interview, which is a day or two away from May, the beginning of May, this interview with Dr. Tara Chalikani is going to coincide with the beginning of a second season here, but more importantly, it's the beginning of Mental Health Awareness Month, and it is hugely important, the work that Dr. Chalikani does at Preferred Behavioral Health. The subject is trauma, and how what is it, and how it affects you, and it's part of a little commitment I've made as I go through life in trying to digest our world and how it's changed and it will change, and the work that the Preferred Behavioral Health Group does. So six weeks ago or so, I had interviewed Mary Pat Angelini, the CEO, and Grace Hanlon, the chair of the board of trustees of Preferred Behavioral Health, because it was a personal commitment to me, and an understanding that the work they do is so needed, and the workings of the universe, which Tara and I were just talking about for a long time, and putting people in places, and how this all works. So this is such an important time in an interview. So, there was a perfect alignment of the sun and the stars and the moon, and we're here. And I'm using terminology that we kind of just talked about. So without further ado, and you all out there should really be attentive, because this is important stuff, really. I want to introduce Dr. Tara Chalikani, and maybe just a little bit bio of yourself, and then we'll kind of jump in. So take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Calvin. I'm so happy to be here, especially on the eve of May and Mental Health Awareness Month. Mental health awareness should be 365 days a year, but we'll take a month to send the message and really put it out there. Like you said, I'm Dr. Tara Chalikani. I've spent my life, my career in healthcare and behavioral healthcare, and committed to making life better for whomever path crosses mine. And I've had a very diverse career, which you and I talked about at length. And I currently am the Chief of Quality and Health Integration at Preferred Behavioral Health Group. And one of my core roles is to educate staff and maintain a trauma-informed environment for our clients, for our staff, and anyone who enters our spaces, whether they're physical or virtual, or out in the community, to make sure that we are in fact approaching everyone through a trauma-informed lens.
Perfect. So what a perfect segue to a first question. And it's funny, I have the questions, I look, I don't even know the answer, not even close. So what do we mean by trauma?
So most people, when they think of trauma, they think of big stuff, right? The abuse, rape, a horrible accident, right? But trauma is any event, a series event, or a set of circumstances that exceed someone's capacity to process them, to understand them. But most importantly, these events cause long-lasting effects. And the effects are just not limited to our brains, right? It's more than just that. It's emotional, it's physical, it's neurological, biological, and psychological. And I think that where our message needs to be sent, and where we need to do more education, is understanding that trauma isn't limited to just PTSD. that trauma could manifest itself in the body. It can cause diabetes. It can cause a stroke,
Wow.
right? Because when our body processes these stressors, everything goes through our brains, right? So it's going to affect all areas of life. And it isn't only limited to mental health disorders.
Before I ask the next question, I just have to reiterate to the
Mhm.
viewers that I did interview Mary Pat Angelini and Grace Allen. We talked about preferred behavioral health group. I'd done my studies in Monmouth, Ocean County, where you provide your services. The work and I went, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe the range, the work, the commitment. I mean, all of that, what preferred behavioral health group does. It's like, wow. And so many more people need to know. And a lot of this does go to Monmouth and Ocean County. We're local. I'm local. It's I'll take my hat off kind of thing to what is being done. So back to trauma. I had to say that because you kind of need to kind of light fires.
Sure.
Um, so you mentioned briefly, it was without beyond my realm, that trauma, diabetes, but how does trauma affect one's health?
So people who have experienced trauma, and specifically I'm going to relate this to childhood experiences, and we call them ACEs, which stands for adverse childhood experiences. So if you are a child and you experience domestic violence in the home, if you had a parent with a substance use disorder, and a variety of other situations, right? If you were abused in any way, it predisposes you in adulthood to a variety of different physical and mental disorders. So people that have experienced childhood trauma are more likely to drink, more likely to use IV drugs, are 15 times more likely to die by suicide,
Wow.
2.5 times more likely to have a heart attack or stroke.
Wow.
So and you know, it is the impact on the brain, but very often it affects various domains of life, which contribute to lifestyle, right? Sometimes, let's say, if so many barriers have been crossed in your life, so many traumas have been experienced, you may live differently, you may live more impulsively, or you might not have a lot of self-worth or self-esteem, and then continue to perpetuate this pattern of abusive relationships and circumstances. So, I mean, this is, Calvin, in all honesty, I mean, this is a semester long course, right? That
Yeah.
we're trying to fit into 25 minutes or so. But yes, the impact is widespread and it affects so much more than just our mental health.
So, so just to reiterate, so it affects physical and mental
Yes.
health.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And you just also touched on the next thought I had. So childhood experiences, just to reiterate again, it really does, childhood really does have a long-term effect uh, on mental health, which you
Yeah.
just said. So, okay. Um, how do we know if these experiences had a negative effect? And is there a way to like quantify it or measure experiences back then to now?
Well, there is an informal questionnaire. It's called the ACEs questionnaire. It's an easy Google search. It's 10 items, kind of like a quick checklist to see, do I have any of these adverse childhood experiences? But I think, kind of going through my mental file cabinet of probably working with thousands of clients, right, over time, I think a lot of people don't connect the dots, right? We compartmentalize, we think we leave things in the past, but really, they never leave us. You know, our brains are the most sophisticated hard drive that was ever created. Everything we've ever felt, seen, heard, smelled, it's all in there. We may put up barriers, so to speak, to compartmentalize because it's too painful to look at, but it doesn't mean that those experiences just went away. They're still there. And I think of, you know, of a client that I had with dissociative identity disorder, which we all laymen will call multiple personality disorder, but we don't really call it that. We call it DID. And she was in her 60s and she had multiple identities
Wow.
and personas. And in our work together, she finally, when she was ready and was in a trauma informed space, right, with me, where she felt safe, where for the first time she could be vulnerable with someone and knew she wouldn't be harmed. She finally, in her 60s, remembered that she was sexually abused when she was 4 years old.
Wow.
And she blocked it out for a lifespan, right? But had negative circumstances. She had been in abusive relationships. She had a lot of health issues. And it was only then that she was able to look at that and be, you know, have the inner strength to be able to look at that. And that's why we're, you know, we're really proud of the fact that at Preferred Behavioral Health Group, we are trauma informed, which means that every interaction you have with someone on our staff should be that. It should be a safe space where people know they will never be re-traumatized, where they know that they can be vulnerable and they can do the work that they need to move forward and be successful in life in all areas of life.
That's a powerful, that process is a powerful and arduous process, I
Yes.
guess, to make, you know, the trauma informed, just to make somebody comfortable enough to
Mhm.
kind of open up. My other editorial thought, and I knew this, I was intelligent enough to know that from the day my son was born, I knew that he's got to have a great,
Mhm.
wonderful life kind of thing, and no trauma, no, because we as infants and children are like the greatest sponges that were ever made,
Yes.
right? And every little thing that goes in eventually is going to come out. You know, the input, the
Mhm.
output. So I was smart enough to know that I want my son, um, you know, to be without trauma and stuff, so that when it all comes, so what goes in comes out. That's
Ye-
what I heard you say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just going off topic for a second, literally a second, you're
O-
smiling.
Okay.
Just a little off topic. I always like to ask this. I do it often. Um, so here goes. Living or dead, excluding family or friends, somebody you'd like to spend the day with.
Oof.
It is an oof. And you know what? You don't have to answer, or it could be a couple, whatever. But it's just, I like to ask that because I like it.
Right, right. All right. So keeping in the spirit of my work and what I do, I would love to spend a day with Carl Jung. He's one of my homeboys, as I like to say. And I'm a Jungian sand play therapist and very fascinated by the unconscious and you know, so much of who we are and what drives how we go about life is unconscious. It's really not in the forefront of our minds. So I would like to say him.
Okay, great
Mhm.
answer. By the way,
Mhm.
great answer.
Mhm.
That's good. All right, moving along. Uh, does trauma affect everyone, even those working like in the field of behavioral health? I mean, it's all inclusive.
Without a doubt. You know, I'll spit out some statistics and then I'll, you know, have some real talk. But right now, we know that statistically 7 out of 10 adults have experienced trauma. And we know that 1 out of every 4 adults has a diagnosable mental health disorder.
Wow.
We also know that 90% of everyone with a diagnosable mental health disorder has experienced trauma. So as you know, myself being a psychotherapist, I know that 90% of anyone that, you know, sits on my couch has experienced trauma in their life. And so as mental health workers, clinicians, we are absorbing that, right? We are experiencing trauma through our clients vicariously, right? And so that is you know, a phenomena of working with clients, especially in this type of work. We know that listening to these stories day in and day out have an effect on us, which it's why it's so important to take care of ourselves, right? To have boundaries, to know when we're at our max and we need to take a day off. Or, you know, I just recently was talking to a colleague who says, I know I need to take a day off because, and then listed their reasons. So we need to have that internal barometer to know when we are at our max and we can't take another call, we can't read another email, we can't have another session, we need time, you know. And whatever it is, whether it's exercise, meditation, yoga, I mean, you have to find your thing. You have to find what works for you, because you can't do this work if you're not going to take care of yourself, because it does impact us without a doubt.
Interesting. Interesting. And you know, I would have never, you don't even think, being a layperson, I don't even comprehend what you guys have to undertake, and
Right.
like it's a wow. Is I mean, this is a loaded question, and before I ask it, I'm just going to hold up. It sort of works, but this I found recently, there's up to 90% increase in college student depression, which I can't even process that. But segue, is there a stigma? I kind of know the answer, but is there a stigma surrounding mental health?
Well, I dream of the day where I could say absolutely not, but that day has not come. And so my answer is absolutely yes, there is. I will say that, you know, I think that having a therapist or talking more about medication or, you know, having anxiety or having depression or even bipolar disorder or an addiction, that it is more mainstream than it's ever been, but not nearly enough. You know, I want to live in a world where we talk about having depression the way we do about having high cholesterol, right? Where there is no shame and it's just understood that it is a condition or something genetic that we've inherited, or, you know, something that we need to manage medically, and where it's okay. And I know that a lot of people are still really uncomfortable with it. And I see it in my work when I know that it's time that maybe a client needs medication and I know that they're reluctant, and I'm not a medication pusher because I think like that's one piece of a pie with many different facets. And the reluctance, or when a parent doesn't want to access services for their child because they don't want to accept or admit or embrace the notion that their child has depression or anxiety. So stigma absolutely exists, but thanks to people like you and others who are bringing it out in the open, and there's no shame. There's no shame.
No shame.
And it's nothing new. It's nothing new. I mean, we have been struggling with mental health disorders since the beginning of time. right? It's just something that is inherent to being human.
Okay. Um, how can we fight that stigma, which we're doing now in part, small way, very small way, but how do we fight it now, to bring it a little bit more for the month of May, even to bring it a little bit more to the forefront, because May, is Mental Health Awareness Month. So are there ways to fight it, in part what we're doing, talking about it?
That is definitely number one. I mean, if we're not talking about it, then how can we do anything about it, right? And just like anything, if we are not aware, we can't change. So whether it's listening to a program like this and then seeking out help, or talking to your partner, your neighbor, your best friend, your coworker, confiding in someone, finding that one person that you can trust and let them know that you're struggling, because chances are that person either is struggling too or knows someone and can help. And if we have health insurance, we should have access to mental health care. You can always call your provider and get a list of names. If you work somewhere that has employee assistance programs, which we do at Preferred Behavioral Health, it's a free way to get some sessions under your belt and get you on your, at least get your needs met and then be referred out elsewhere. So there is help. There's organizations like NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness.org, NAMI.org. They're national, there's local chapters. So there's help. And I mean, we all pretty much have phones or access to the internet. It's a Google search, right? Mental health help near me, or how I want to Google it. Help is at our finger, need it,
Okay.
and then make that commitment of obtaining it.
Okay. Uh, Off topic, but telehealth is becoming a big portion,
Yes.
in your armaments to,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So,
And telehealth has been, yeah.
I mean, it's,
But telehealth makes help more accessible.
yes, that's more accessible than ever before. Zooming, which
Absolutely.
wasn't
There's
around.
no barriers.
Okay.
Sure.
So we finished this wonderful interview, and I wanted to thank you, because I know you have a ton of stuff beyond comprehension on your plate, but I did want to thank you for this time, because it does mean a lot. It means a lot for me to be able to chat about this, because it's a commitment I've made, to at least be a purveyor of information. So thank you, Dr. Tara Chalikani, and thank
Thank you.
Preferred Behavioral Health. And what we're doing is to be continued, to at least bring this to the forefront. And again, I thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend, which means it's almost Friday.
Yes,
I'm trying to be
it is.
chronological.
Thank you so much.
Yes, but thank you very, very much. And I thank Preferred Behavioral Health, and to be continued.